Hello wonderful humans, and welcome to my channel where I talk about books, because what else is there to ever talk about? Today I'm going to be talking about 5 books that I read in August. Now I should start by saying I did read more than 5 books this August, a mixture of physical books, ebooks and audiobooks. I probably got through a few more books this month than I normally do because I've been listening to a couple of extra audiobooks, and also we're currently in lockdown where I live, so it's provided me a little bit of extra time, but I'm only going to focus on 5 of those books today, and some of the other books might pop up in future videos. So the first book is I suppose a rom-com, chick lit, contemporary female women's fiction. I've read a few books by this author and I've loved all of them. I've got a few more that I want to read, but there's something fresh about this style of writing. It's a UK author. I believe her name is Vari McFarlane. I did look up how you pronounce it. It's called Last Night, and it's just a fantastic book about a woman and her friends and their friendships and her journey to sort of accept, I suppose, who she is. I love so many things about it. It made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me feel so many feelings, and I loved it. Last Night is definitely one of those books that I'd recommend when you're sort of hanging out at home, reading in bed with a mug of coffee or even a glass of wine. I think I've read it with both at different times of the day. I demolished this pretty quickly from start to finish. It was not a difficult read. It was a beautiful, beautiful book to read, and I would highly recommend checking out some of her stuff. She's really great. The next book that I read or listened to, actually this one was an audiobook. So I found this book by accident, and it was a really, really happy accident, not a bad accident in the slightest. It was given away by Audible for NAIDOC Week here in Australia. So NAIDOC Week is the National Aborigines and Islanders Day Observance Committee, NAIDOC. And every year a week is dedicated to celebrating the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here. It includes awards and all sorts of things. But Audible were very, very great. They were wonderful. They offered a selection of Australian Indigenous books that we could choose between. And I chose this book by Larissa Berend called After Story. And I'd never heard of it before. I think it had just been released, so it was also a fantastic opportunity to read a new Indigenous author, and I loved it. I loved it so much that I went and bought a physical copy. I've loaned it to my mum at the moment, so I can't show you, but I'll insert some sort of image of the cover. After Story is told from 2 perspectives. It's a mother and daughter, so Aboriginal mother and daughter who, I suppose you could say, have grown apart, and they've both sort of seeking to reunite that relationship in different ways. And they actually go on a tour of England and go and visit a whole heap of literary destinations. And this is why I chose the book, because I knew that the story took place in a whole heap of locations around the UK, London, England, surrounds. Literary locations. So they went and visited places linked with Jane Austen, the Brontes, Shakespeare, a few other people. And so that's what drew me in initially. And this book excites me. It's definitely one you should go check out. It follows these two women, strong in their own ways, and we learn a lot about them, and perspective is really, really interesting in this. So learning different things about these characters through the other person's eyes. It's a really wonderful book. Definitely recommend it. As I said, I'm really looking forward to giving this one a reread. I listened to the audiobook, which was brilliant. it was read by two different voice actors, Tamala Shelton and Shari Sebens. I thought that it was a wonderful book to listen to, and I am curious to know whether that experience is the same reading the book. Go check it out. I loved it. I totally would recommend it to anyone, especially if you would like to learn a little bit more about Indigenous culture in Australia. And yeah, go check it out. I loved it. I'm actually really excited just even thinking about it. The next book was also an audiobook, another free one, and I don't know how I got this. So it kind of came up, would you like another free book? I'm like, yes, of course I would like another free audiobook. Who wouldn't want another free audiobook? And this one I chose, I had a few choices and I selected this one by accident. I'm so glad I did. It was highly enjoyable. It was written by Lily Chu. It's called The Stand-In. Again, I'll insert the cover here somewhere. And the reason why I chose it, it was read or acted. It wasn't read as such. It was actually acted by Philippa Soo, who some people might know from Hamilton, the original Broadway cast of Hamilton. She played Eliza, and she brought such character. You could really feel that it was the character reading or telling the story, and I thought it was just a really wonderful way to experience this story. Predictable in a way. It's your typical sort of mistaken identity based thing. A woman is mistaken for a normal woman is mistaken for a famous actress, and the actress reaches out and asks her to be her body double, and then hijinks ensue. Again, I'd recommend this if you're looking like with Last Night, which may be a little bit more emotional. After Story, again, a little bit more emotional, but The Stand-In was light-hearted fun and exactly what I needed during the first few days of lockdown. Definitely was the perfect book to hit to keep me entertained and not dwelling on the fact that we're in lockdown here again. So the fourth book, another audiobook. Again, I got this one for free. I'm going to talk to you about 3 audiobooks that I got for free. This is just my, this was offered, I believe, to most people. I wouldn't be surprised if many other people read it this month or listened to it this month, because it was Audible's August free audiobook called The Midnight Library. It's by Matt Haig. And again, I really enjoyed this. It's not what I would normally gravitate towards on outward appearances or looking at the blurb. I sort of looked at it and went, I don't know if that's quite what I'm looking for. But it proved to be intelligent, quite philosophical without being preachy. I mean, it quotes philosophers. Yeah, philosophy was definitely a big part of it. It reminded me a little bit, not the comedy of it, but some of the ideas put forward reminded me a little bit of The Good Place, but I probably wouldn't say that's a good comparison. The TV show The Good Place is definitely a comedy. It's not the same as that, but I could see that sort of exploration of the of what happens after you die, and the choices that we make. It also reminded me, there's a musical called If Then that Idina Menzel was in. I haven't seen it, love the soundtrack, but that's sort of the idea of choices, and if we'd made one other choice, if we did this, then this would happen, and if we made a different choice, this would happen. I love the idea of that, of looking into how our choices impact us, and that sort of butterfly effect. One small minor change can have huge impact on our lives. And Nora, the main character, hasn't necessarily made all the best choices, or hasn't had the best choices made for her. And I actually thought that Nora was she grew on me. I started out not necessarily a big fan of her, and she grew on me the more I got to know her. And I think that's intentional. I think if you really love Nora to begin with, I don't think that's what the author intended. She definitely grows definitely grew on me. It was narrated by Carey Mulligan, and I really enjoyed her her reading of it. It gave Nora some really great personalities, and I don't know. All three of these audiobooks, the voices impacted my experience. So it's hard to know if I would have had the same experience, if I would have loved these quite so much, if I had just read them in a book. So I'm going to say I would recommend the audiobooks for After Story, The Midnight Library, and The Stand-In. And as I've said a few times, being in lockdown, they were the exact kind of books that I needed to sort of get out of my own head a little bit. The Midnight Library definitely gave me things to think about in a deeper way. The Stand-In was probably a little bit fluffy, which was what I needed right at the start of that lockdown. And After Story was just a wonderful, wonderful book. I'm gushing, but I loved it. I would like to see more. I'm looking forward to sort of finding more from this author. I don't think she's written anything else, but I'm going to go and have a look. That's something I'm really keen to see more from this author, because I loved the characters, I loved the story, I loved the journey that they went on, the actual physical journey that they went on the tour of literary sites around England, from this small town in Australia, and comparing. I think one of the things that really got to me about After Story was the comparisons between these things in England that are celebrated as really old and we've got to protect them because they're really old, and then the Australian Indigenous, the Aboriginal culture in Australia that has not been protected but is so much older, and that worth and oh, it was just wonderful. I loved it. Go read it or listen to it. I don't mind if you listen to it or read it, but go check it out. So the last book that I want to talk about for my 5 books that I read in August is not going to come as a major surprise to anyone. I'm trying to keep a month ahead with my Wheel of Time videos. So this one was me reading in August in preparation for September's videos. So I read The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. I started it a little bit before, I started it in July, but it took me a little bit to sort of work my way through it, given my work schedule and listening to some audiobooks and a few other things. But yeah, I enjoyed this. It was not what I expected it to be. At the end of The Eye of the World, I sort of made a couple of predictions, I suppose, not quite predictions, but I had in my mind an idea of what I thought the plot would be. It didn't turn out to be exactly what I thought, but that's a good thing, because what I thought would have been too predictable, and this was a much better way for Robert Jordan to take the series, and I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to talking about it in future videos. So please subscribe and check out some of my Eye of the World videos in preparation for me putting out my 8 Great Hunt videos over the course of September. So there you go. That's the 5 books that I am sharing with you that I read in August. As I said at the start of the video, I read a few other books here and there. I listened to a couple of other audiobooks. I read a couple of other ebooks, but these are the ones that sort of have stuck with me that I'm really excited about. And some of the other ones I've got for future videos, so you can learn more about them when I get to them later. Make sure you comment, have you read any of these books? Did you enjoy them? Did you not? Are you planning on reading any of them? Have you got any book suggestions now that you've sort of seen these are some of the books that I have been reading lately? I will say I do tend to read a little bit more fantasy than what it looks like in this video, but when I'm reading a big fantasy series like The Wheel of Time, I tend to avoid reading too many other similar books so that I'm not mixing up stories or worlds or anything like that. So currently I'm reading a lot of contemporary fiction, a bit lighter because of lockdown, and as I go forward, when I take a little bit of a break, I'll probably pick up other fantasy books here and there. I've got so many that I want to read. So anyway, comment, like, subscribe, and check back for future videos. Thanks for checking this one out.